Hello, everyone, and welcome to Seriously Loco, the Seriously Crazy fan podcast for El Paso Locomotive FC. I am your host, Phil Bakke, and I'm joined tonight by my co-hosts, Mika Burrell. Mika, how we doing?
Doing well. Long time no see. We got a good one tonight.
Yeah, it feels like we're getting back into, we're in the preseason, but we're getting close. I can almost taste the season. Christian Canales joins us as well. Christian, how we doing tonight?
Doing great. T-minus 10 days now? Can't wait.
10 days. Yeah.
Crazy.
And I mean, we could think of no better way to start off the season. We've done this for the last few years now, but getting the season started off right. We have a very, very special guest tonight, a man who needs no introduction in El Paso these days, Brian Clarhaut, the manager for El Paso Locomotive FC. Brian, thanks for coming on the show. How are you doing?
Yeah, what's up, guys? Thanks for having me. I'm doing good. A little bit tired. Like you said, no introduction. I've been doing a lot of stuff, getting ready for this season, long preseason, but I'm excited to get going. Like you said, 10 days and our season starts. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, it's our pleasure having you on. I mean, obviously, brand new to El Paso in the last few months. So in your welcome to El Paso, we always kind of like ask people how they're finding the city, how they're getting acquainted to things. And then also, I mean, one of the things that, as with any city, as I know, you're from the Philadelphia area in New Jersey, food is big. So in El Paso, same thing goes. Have you found any spots that you hit up for food in El Paso in these early days?
Yeah. Well, I've settled in good. I really like it here. And my wife came about a week ago, a week and a half ago with my son. I've said this before. I kept her in Europe. They were in Austria for a bit during the preseason to let me kind of focus and get the team and get things organized. But like you said, big food city, Philadelphia, big food city. I haven't had a chance to go to the real I'm going to say hole in the wall type places like diners, dives, and drive-throughs. Those type of spots.
Yeah, that
I want to find. I've had some fans at the coach's show give me a full list of suggestions. I've been, since my wife's been here, she's been cooking a bit. We had I like Taco Toto. Tote, is that the place?
Yeah, great place.
I think that's like quality, like fast. It's like fast food tacos, right?
Yeah.
But it's solid. So I had that a few days ago, just like for a quick one. But like I said, I need to find my go-to local Mexican spot, authentic, like where they're known for stuff. So I'm still in the search. I have a whole list that was given to me. So it's all good. I'll be looking forward to that once I have a little time to go.
Well, I mean, we'll waste no time getting into the meat of what we want to talk about, which at the end of the day, everybody's excited to see your team hit the field. Obviously a big returning core of players. But Mika, I mean, I know you want to dive straight into the philosophy side of things.
Yeah. I mean, Brian, of course you were a player and now you've started your coaching career, and there's so much focus with managers in world football on philosophy and on tactics, and I'm wondering, do you have a strict tactical philosophy of your own, or are you more adaptable based on kind of the game state, the opponent, maybe even the players at your disposal? How would you describe your philosophy if you have one?
I would describe it in one word, and that's control, right? We want to be in control of the match, and how does that, what's the definition of that? And I can go into a little bit more detail into that. I do have a distinct way of playing. I know you guys discussed this 3-5-2 that I've played in the past. For me, it's not about the formation, it's about the principles in the formation. So I'm very adaptable in this sense where the formation, I'm open to that. I can implement my philosophy in different types of formations. And ultimately, I'd like to be a team that is able to switch within games, and still when outsiders see it, they're like, okay, that's El Paso Locomotive. I think it's, when I talk about control, it's about controlling the opponent with the ball, and it's controlling with and I always ask my players, what is football? What is the objective of football? That is where the starting point is. And the starting point of that is, the objective is to score one more goal than the opponent. And how do you do that? If the opponent is at the half line or in your own half, and you can clip balls over the top of them with control and run onto it and get goal scoring chances, you'd be stupid not to continue doing that for 90 minutes. Unfortunately, teams make that difficult, and it's a way, okay, how do we break this team down? I think in the later years, I've been a little bit more influenced from Ralph Ragnick, from Red Bull, and studying them a bit more into faster attacks and into faster transitions, into really controlled pressing, pressing actions in a controlled manner. So that's influenced me a bit. But I would say we're going to be a team that's going to be aggressive defensively. We're going to want to be, we value being without the ball. We value knowing that it's an opportunity to transition, because 73% of all goals scored are scored with 10 seconds or less when you get the football. So that's a stat that I like to talk about to my teams a lot. So a lot of times, I try to teach my teams to, when we are hunting the ball or we're in this defensive zone, that it is a very good opportunity to score a goal, and value that. So that's one part of the philosophy. The other part of the philosophy is, when we do have the ball, how can we break down the team, and how can we do that as quick as possible with control? Now, a lot of times that is to work the opponent left and right to find a way to go through them. But when we do go through them, then it's go time. Then it is time to attack, to get box entries, to get a goal scoring opportunity. Now, in order to, you don't want to get into Hawaii football back and forth, where you're doing a transition and another transition. There are times, to answer your question, in games where, okay, if we are up, can we control the play and change the rhythm of the game? The word control, the word fast, the word aggressive, the word box entries, the word goal scoring opportunities, the word balance are all words that I would use to define a certain type of philosophy that I've kind of put together to hopefully win games and play attractive football at the same time.
Coach, you mentioned, kind of trying to, I don't know if emulate's the right word, but you've watched and have taken in a lot of, Rangnick was your name that you mentioned. Is there anyone that you have directly worked with or under that has really mentored you or given you a strong foundation in the way that you approach the game now?
When I was with John Wall, who's actually the assistant at Jamaica now, he was the assistant at Finland, who I first went to Sweden with. He was a guy that we really had a similar philosophy, and really developed a lot of these principles and sub principles in the last 10 to 7 years. I think he's a real good student of the game. Has written a few books on Bielsa that I've been a part with. So he's a guy that I credit a lot of my upbringing and how progressive he is as a coach, and how much of a football nerd he is. And he won't mind me saying that. When I was at GIF Sundsvall, obviously Emil Forsberg came from that club, and he would train with us a lot during the summer or coming after Euros. And he's a guy I would speak to a lot about his time at Leipzig. And Jesse Marsh was there at that time, both as an assistant and head coach. And I was able to go to Salzburg and watch them and see Jesse coach a bit. So I've studied them a bit, and I think kind of having a friend who has a high knowledge on a special philosophy and is always on the upper echelon of football trends and how the football is adapting, with kind of using some of my network and what I believe in, kind of helped form kind of some of my thought process a bit, and some of the experiences that I've had coaching as well.
You touched on your time in Sweden, which obviously seems like that was the real formative part of your coaching career while still being really young. It's very impressive what you were able to accomplish there. And, having personally experienced the highest highs of promotion with GIF Sundsvall and then, the crushing low of relegation, of having, taken over the team mid-season and really being put in kind of, a tough position. What is your opinion of promotion relegation overall, having seen it from, a head coaching perspective in Europe where it is ubiquitous in soccer there?
Um, Yeah, like I know no other way in professional football. So since I've coached in professional football since 2016, I've kind of dealt with that way of promotion relegation. Even in the third league, it's ruthless. This is the only professional team in this town, and there's a lot of pressure on you. The media is all on. This is their professional team. So, and there's a lot of money on the line, whether you're going
Sure.
up or going down. There's a lot of economic implications. I mean, I like it. I mean, I've been on both ends. Uh, I mean, the lower end of it is very stressful. It's very stressful for the town. It's very stressful for the city. It's very stressful for the club. It's very stressful as a manager. It's very stressful on the players, but I think it's part of the game. And I think from the promotional end, it's very stressful as well. So I think being on both ends of that spectrum, it's a lot of stress. Um, but what do I think of it? I think it's good. I think it's good. I mean, I think it makes things very interesting to the last game, and I like it a lot. That sometimes, there's been times where I did not like it. Believe me, right?
For sure.
But now looking back at it, it's part of what makes our sport great and what makes it beautiful, and I have a lot of respect for that. And I think the American fan base would really like it. And I think you always see when we're watching this, like, championship game deadline day, is this team going down to League One, and vice versa, and it's even those games are so interesting to watch. Okay, there's $20 million on the line, or whatever it is, probably more than that. Um, in these lower tiers in England, it's such an entertaining factor. But I think it's a big part of the game, and I think it's something that fans can really get behind.
So speaking about that move, I mean, you talked about some of your connections to Europe, talked about obviously like your formation in Sweden. When it came time for you and Locomotive find each other, I know you've talked in interviews previously about sort of how the network, like how your network sort of led you to, a couple of people connected, some of their like consultants and things, headhunted you basically. But what made you decide to make that jump from Europe, where you had like built sort of this network in Sweden, certainly, and maybe broader than that, it seems. What made you decide that Locomotive was the right next choice for your career?
I I thought about it a lot, and like I told you before, I only knew kind of one way in my career in professional football, and how I've worked in Sweden, worked in the different levels of Sweden. It's a very organized league. It's a very tactical league. Um, but I also wanted the opportunity to work with American players and see and lead them and lead a different type of human being, and see how I adapt to that. I value the American player. I value the American mentality, and that for me was the big draw to me, to kind of see, okay, um, and maybe it had to do with a little bit of the relegation to see, okay, the mental toughness of things, to be honest. And I wanted to deal with the mental side of the American player, to be honest with you. That's what drew me to this job.
And with this job, also has come the title
Or
of tech.
yeah, one part of it. That was a big aspect of coming back to the US.
Nice.
Yeah. Go on, sorry.
Sorry, coach. So with this job also came the title of technical director. Now I'm not sure if that has brought new responsibilities for you or challenges for you. What have been your thoughts on that? And was that part of what either attracted you to the job or maybe gave you pause about taking the job?
No, I think it's a positive thing because selfishly as a coach, you always want to bring in your own guys. You want guys that that you feel comfortable with, that you either know from coaching before, that you have some type of relationship with, or that you just like as a player in general. So I looked at it as a positive, and to be honest, in the clubs that I've worked with previously, I've worked with good sporting directors that have been able to get me guys that I've wanted. Like I said, like there's a reason why I wanted Ronaldo Damus from Orange County when we brought him to GIF Sundsvall. That wasn't, in Sweden they didn't know who Ronaldo Damus was, with all due respect. So you kind of work and operate that way, but I think when you're solely the one responsible for building a roster, that's a really good challenge, and that's something that I have a lot of experience in, even with my earlier stages of coaching when I was in college before I went over to Sweden in professional football. So I like that aspect. This year I was able to bring in one or two guys, maybe three with Lalito later on, and that's cool. To add a little bit of different guys that I'm looking at, but it's a big responsibility. It's more work for sure, but I think it's something that it allows you to really put your spin and your stamp on your style of football once you can start to build those things. And one example that we can look at is Arteta with Arsenal, right? I think that's a good example of that, right? We see Arsenal when he first took the job, it was hard for him, right? It took him some time, and now he was able to work on his philosophy, work on his system, get some pieces that he needs, and now they're flying. So it's part of a process. I hope in this, I think we have good enough players to not wait that long. I think we're in a pretty good position. I'm blessed. I love this player group. I think they're super professional. I think we have a really good core of players, and they're really starting to click and know what I want. So yeah, I hope we're not like Arsenal in the later years, just to put that out there. But I think it's a pretty good example of your question a bit.
I wanted to give you a chance. I think one of the things that in USL and with the people who cover the league, there is a bias often towards players who are proven at the USL level when judging kind of relative quality. And when there are guys coming in from foreign leagues, it can be tough to say like, hey, how are they going to fit in? Or, what is the relative level? And so I wanted to give you a chance to kind of talk about the new guys that you have brought in, Peter, and then Pavkovic, and then obviously Mark Navarro being sort of the marquee guy. But the couple of guys that you brought in here towards the end of closer to the end of preseason, I guess, and how you are seeing them bed in with the team, and what you're thinking USL will be thinking of those guys by the end of the season.
Let me first start off by saying this. I think the USL League in general, this is a bit different than what guys, and I've said this publicly, even for myself, were you guys at the San Antonio? Did you see how many?
Yes.
It's a very, especially I think San Antonio is one of the more extreme or distinct styles of teams that play a certain way, but it's really uh, I call it a two-phase type of football match. You got this build-up phase from the keeper, and then if you break that, because teams press so high, you're off to the races. So there isn't that much of an establishment phase, I call it. Kind of, let's say, 25 meters in your own half to 25 meters in the opponent's other half. That is a bit limited. And where I'm coming from, that's where all the bread and butter is made, right? Teams don't, if they're too cautious, because if you break them one time and you score, the game's over. They can just park the bus and 1-0, the game's finished. So that's something that I've really had to be like, adapt, to be honest, and be like, okay, these starting positions from goal kick, how you build that out, super important. How you how aggressive these teams are, how they don't let you breathe in your own half of the field, with New Mexico and San Antonio as examples. I've had to look at that and be like, okay, this is a bit different. This is a lot more physical league. This is a lot more committing numbers up in the press type of league. And I think our players, especially the ones coming from Europe, that's going to take them some time to adapt to that. And I've spoken to them about that, and they will admit that if you bring them on to a podcast. It's different in those ways. No, I don't know if every team in USL will be like that. I think we've faced two teams that have a pretty distinct style, but there's going to be other teams that are maybe a bit different. In terms of some of these players, I think it's always a bit interesting to see how they settle into a foreign culture, a foreign team, a foreign city, a foreign style of play, like I just discussed with you about, and how quickly can those people adapt. Now, we have some of the best players in world football go from Chelsea, let's say, to Arsenal or to Tottenham in the same city, and it takes them a year to 6 months to adapt. They don't hit the ground running. So I always am sensitive to that. These are the top echelon people that might take a while. I think a guy like Bense from the Hungarian league, he was out of play for quite some time. For 6 months, he didn't want to re-sign a contract because he wanted to make a move abroad. When I first took this job, I looked at at what I thought was needed and what needed to be improved, and I thought there needed to be some pace and athleticism on the back line. And when Bense came available with his type of experience at the highest levels in his home country, maybe one international cap with Hungary, a consistent performer with the youth national teams of Hungary, I thought it made sense. And to be honest, the San Antonio game, I was cautious of even playing him because I think he had one training. He was in Juarez for 7 or 8 days, getting his visa, stuck in a hotel, and he felt good. We did some tests on him to see how he moved, and we threw him in against San Antonio, and you could see, hey, it wasn't like the perfect game, but you could see his quality and his athletic abilities and how he will help from an athletic side in this back line with his pace and experience. So he's just going to keep getting better. I think it's a really important signing. And I think it's a good pairing and a good pickup for us. Super professional guy. Easy to get along with and fits. All our guys are good guys with this team. Super tight team. So I'm really happy with him as a person, as a professional, how he is with the guys, and I think the sky's the limit with him. Like I think we haven't seen him reach his max so far. So happy with that so far. Who else did we want to chat about with Petrovic a little bit?
Yeah. I mean, I'm happy to talk about whoever you want to.
I brought in Peter, obviously a guy I knew from Sweden, coming off an ACL, a big year in 2021. Pain in the ass to play against. That's why I liked him, to be honest. When I was playing him, and had a huge year, and I knew he had a devastating injury when he was probably at the pinnacle of his real prime senior career. And when we were able to get him here and able to work it out, I was really excited because he has very unique 1v1 ability to go inside, to go outside. Um, hits has a great shot on the ball, good on free kicks, and a fast player. And again, right, he's coming off a year of injury, and it's going to take time for him as well and him to adapt. And so we'll see more from him, but I think it's an exciting player. It's an entertaining player. It's a game-changing player. So yeah, very positive. Big background on him. I think he was in Malmo when he was 16 or so. Highly talented guy coming out of Sweden. Then we have Mark Navarro. Big CV, big resume from some of the biggest leagues in the world, Espanyol, going into Watford. And again, not maybe has not played that much in recent years, and wanting to come to El Paso and enjoy his football, being patient with him as well. And I've really seen in the last week this guy really start to get going. And it's really exciting to see the quality of him on the ball and his physicalness and how big he is. So he'll be fine as well. But I think the common denominator with these players, all huge upside, all big talent guys, but maybe their football has not been that consistent in recent years. And they're going to need time.
Coach, moving on to kind of like our hopes or expectations and goals for the 2023 season. Obviously, there's been a signing of Luis Moreno, who's the youngest signing in the history of the club. And I'm wondering, is betting in youth talent a priority for you this season? And do you take the approach of integrating youth slowly into the first team, or is it more, if you're good enough, you're old enough? And what do you just make of the young talent and how you plan to use them?
I mean, I've always been a guy that if you're good enough to play and you're one of the best 11, play. Like if you're 14 years old and you got a contract and we bring a guy up from the academy and he's the best guy and he trains with us and he can play, like we're in the business of winning games. Like why not play? So I'm open to that. The best guys play, for us to win games. I think if we didn't do that based on an age of whether a guy is too old or too young, we wouldn't be doing the right thing. How to integrate the youth and how to grow the youth. I think it's important to, as a young club, start to have mainstays that the fans know and that players develop from the academy into the first team that are locomotive guys that know the philosophy, that this is their home. And that's something that I've experienced in Europe a bit, right? So GIF Sundsvall, for example, they had a very good academy. We produced a lot of players abroad that would get bought to Italy or so forth. But the point being is they'd get brought up to the first team. And whether they stay there or get sold and move on to a bigger club abroad, they know that that's their home club and they're coming back at some point in their career. And that would be my goal here as well. So whether it's an Abarca or Yoel or Lalito or one of these younger guys, Abarca and Yoel, for example, they are academy products. They have first team contracts. This is their home. They are from here. Can we groom them? They're in the locomotive is in their DNA. Can we make these guys the new mainstays? Because someone's going to have to be the next Yuma, the next Borelli, the next Chapa, the next guys that have been here for 5 years. And I think it's a great opportunity to start to integrate these guys to be club icons, whether for the future and whether they leave and go forward in their careers. But if they're from here, we know we will see them again. And that's always a real good goal of mine. And I think should be for any club.
Well, Coach, I wanted to thank you for spending the time with us. And in the way of wrapping up, the playoffs have been kind of the stated goal. Getting back to the playoffs is a big goal, I think, from the club's perspective. I'm not trying to put any words in your mouth or anything like that, but I think that is, an expectation of the fans as well, with what's gone on historically at the club and with the success they've had in the first few years. So with that being said, now that you've got a couple of games against other USL sides and have had a chance to see some of the level of where, the New Mexicos and San Antonios are at, how are you feeling about the prospects of Locomotive getting back into the playoffs this year?
Listen, I'm not going to beat around the bush on this. I said this before. People ask me, what's the goal? The goal for me is we have to make the playoffs. And once we get there, then the sky's the limit in this type of competition. Can we get hot at the right time? Can we be in good physical condition during that time? That's one of my goals, to hit optimal physical condition within our fitness periodization during that playoff time. So that is the goal, and that is the bar for me. And I think we have the team to do that. Like I said, if we have our guys healthy and we have our best performers healthy, we can compete with anyone in the league. And I think we showed that for this past weekend. It was probably the first time where I put out one of the strongest lineups that we could possibly put out. But I also put out a pretty strong lineup for 45 minutes against RSL and was very happy in that performance. So I feel comfortable. I believe in my players. I like these players. I think they're becoming a really tight team, which is a big percentage of it, and how they operate and how they fight for each other and how they gel together and forming that. So that part of the preseason, we're starting to see that come together in a real positive light. So we can talk about tactics. We can talk about a lot of things. When you play San Antonio's, when you play certain teams, like, you need to be there united, and you got to be ready to battle, win the second balls, win the fight, win the 50-50 balls. And that's what I was most impressed with our performance against San Antonio. These guys knew what type of game it was going to be. And they rolled up their sleeves and said, hey, this may not be the prettiest football that we're going to see, that we're going to be able to play, but we need to compete. And if we can combine both of them, then we can be a pretty good team. We need to combine the beauty and the beast here. And if we can do that, we will have a successful season.
Well, thanks again, Coach, for coming on. I will, just the last question, pork roll or Taylor ham?
Yeah, I call it pork roll.
Oh my gosh, it's Taylor ham.
I'm from South Jersey. Pork roll, egg, and cheese on everything bagel. That could be a go-to for me. So I think we need to leave on that. I don't want to get to another 40-minute discussion. I mean, we have another 40-minute discussion on that podcast. But yeah, I really appreciate it. I think you guys do a really good job on your coverage with us. And I think it's important to have these type of podcasts and to be happy when things are good, and to be negative when things are negative. That shows passion, and those are things that I've been accustomed to. So looking forward to going through this 5th year with you guys, and looking forward to growing this Locomotive brand and Locomotive family together.
Great. We love it, Coach, and we'll be talking to you hopefully throughout the season. Not necessarily on the podcast, but we'll see you at the games for sure. And best of luck to you and the boys.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks again, Coach.
Yeah, take care.
Welcome back to Seriously Loco. Well, you guys just heard from Brian Clarhaut, the manager of El Paso Locomotive, and Mika and Christian, I just wanted to get your guys' kind of instant reactions in the aftermath of Coach's comments. Anything like in particular stand out to you, or anything that really got you excited from talking to Coach ahead of the first game of the season?
For me, I think I don't know. I didn't know what to expect. But he's kind of a very interesting hybrid in that, yes, he is an American, which, is like, I mean, it's like it's a personality trait to some extent, but also like professionally, he has spent a lot of time outside of America. So kind of like his opinions on things and his perspective on things is very unique, especially from past coaches that we've talked to. Obviously, Mark grew up in England and spent a lot of time coaching in England, so he has that like foundation. And John, in Australia and Japan, and he briefly in America before here still, but um, a minority of his life. So having someone who did grow up in America is a unique perspective, and I think it's refreshing. I find it very like endearing. To me, it makes him a lot more relatable. So I'm very excited. I'm excited to spend the season following him and the team, and I'm excited.
Yeah, not only did he, is he American, did he grow up here, but he's from the greatest state in the Union, New Jersey. So, no, I mean, that's where I grew up and was born. So I am partial to that. But of course, it's El Paso all day around these parts. Oh yeah, it was a pleasure to get to talk to Brian. I had the pleasure of meeting him before, speaking to him tonight. He's been, oh my goodness, the guy has been definitely doing the rounds out there. I mean, he's got a coach's show every week. He's been doing season ticket holder events. I think he just had an event with Eighth Notch. Of course, people got to speak to him at the playoff match, which I'm sure we'll get into, or preseason. I'm getting way ahead of myself. The preseason match against San Antonio FC. So he has been making a concerted effort to be out there and getting to know the fans and showing his face. And yeah, I appreciate it for sure, and I'm sure those of us or those who are listening have noticed it too and appreciate it. So yeah, I do love how he's kind of just gone like 2-footed into the job and is really trying to bet in, like really bet in and get to be a part of the community. And I think that can only be a good thing as we're just 10 days out from actual football being played on the pitch again at Southwest University Park. So yeah, it was a pleasure to talk to him.
Yeah, I really like the fact that we have a guy who is American, wants to, and specifically talked about like working with American players is something that he wanted as part of, his decision to return to the States to coach. But he's bringing a ton of perspective from his time in Europe. I think it's clear that he has like thought a lot about what sort of coach he is, what sort of coach he aspires to be. And I mean, I'll just say now that we'll be starting the Emil Forsberg to Locomotive hashtag here shortly.
Oh my goodness. Talk about a Richie Ryan replacement. Jeez.
No, I think he spoke. I am really excited over the course of the season to get to see what his plans are in action. And I mean, we got a little bit of a preview in that preseason match against San Antonio. And Mika, I mean, you were there on the ground, you saw things firsthand. But what were some things that stuck out to you about, obviously it is a 2-0 win for Locomotive, but as with any preseason match, we always talk about the performance over the result. And what did you make of particularly that opening maybe 75, 80 minutes of the match when it was kind of full strength for both teams?
Brian talked about this at the very top of the interview, and that's control. And I have to say, I mean, it's easy for coaches in the wider sport to just get up there and say platitudes, but he's absolutely serious about his team having control, because that's exactly what we saw against San Antonio at the weekend. And what I will say is that did not necessarily equate to chance creation. I think San Antonio had the better chances, but Locomotive dominated the ball. He ran a 4-3-3 of sorts. He had Benny Diaz, of course, in goal. Yuma and Bense Pavkovic, the Hungarian, who literally just cleared visas and is able to play for us now, partnered in the middle there. Mark Navarro out wide, and Nick Hines on the left. And then the midfield three was Kostishin, who was it? Liam Rose and Eric Calvillo, which I thought was a really nice balance. And then the front three, which I think we will see this front three, maybe even on opening night of Petrovic, Solignac, and Sanupe. They were very good as well. So yeah, I mean, completely dominated the ball, just didn't make too many chances, but it ends 0-0 against, the champions who put out their full strength team for the most part until about 75 minutes, like you said. So I was really pleased with what I saw. And I think it shows that a lot of work has been going on the training pitch, and some of the players that appeared against San Antonio hadn't played before that, actually. So for those players, it just shows their quality, that we've really added quality and depth and replaced some key players that we've missed, and that we've had to let go of. Especially Bense Pavkovic. I thought he was very, very good, looked very controlled, very assured in that back line. So yeah, I enjoyed it. Got a little bit of sunburn, but I think it was worth it.
I mean, it is nice. One of the things that's always struck me about these preseason friendlies, ever since season 1 is, Clarhaut talked about the intensity of that game and the game against New Mexico. And I think preseason games against New Mexico and San Antonio have become a bit of an annual tradition for Locomotive, and they are always fiery.
Yeah.
I mean, look no further than a Yuma red card in the match against New Mexico. This is not a some friendly is a very broad term. It is truly a preseason match. I think calling it friendly is maybe a little bit disingenuous. But with all that being said, I think one of the things that we were looking forward to is how are these players, because Locomotive have lost a lot of minutes out of this roster. And so one of the things that we were looking for in finally kind of seeing this team in action live is how are those guys like, I mean, Kostishin is like kind of almost like the poster child of like guys who technically were signed last year, didn't have the ability or, to make an impact in the team because of, visa concerns and all sorts of like navigating immigration and all of that stuff. So seeing those guys in action, Mika, I mean, it sounds like a pretty, maybe a little bit better picture than some of the, just the unknown for fans saying like, well, I don't know what to expect from Kostishin. Like, so I guess seeing those guys, like, in addition to Pavkovic, like, did you see anybody who really like stuck out or showed you something?
Yeah. I mean, like I said, Pavkovic was really impressive back there, and I think when you're retooling or rebuilding, whatever you want to say, I think you start from the back. But certainly as far as who caught the eye in an attacking sense, definitely Dennis Kostishin. He is the number 10 going into this season. He's been given that number 10 shirt. That number weighs heavy because it did belong to some very talented players in our immediate past, and we are looking kind of for that Dylan Mares replacement, if you will. Maybe not exactly like for like, but someone who can drive the ball forward and contribute with goals and assists and have a little bit of flair about him too. And so Kostishin, when he got on the ball, everyone paid attention. He definitely got some oohs and ahs from the crowd as well. He's got a bag of tricks on him. He's got that burst of pace. And I think also what was really impressive about him is he was very willing to track back and make some pretty robust tackles. I mean, you mentioned it, Phil. These things are friendlies in name only, but it was actually a very physical affair as well. I don't know if that's because the fans were there and they were feeling pumped up and wanting to entertain, but it was pretty fiery, I think, for a preseason. So yeah, Kostishin looked really good. Petrovic, he played on the opposite wing from where we were sitting, so it was hard to kind of get a read on him. I don't know that he had the impact that he's had in other preseason games because he's already scored, as we know. But yeah, Kostishin looked very good indeed. And then, other players were able to come on, like Miles Lyons. He he finally got on the pitch for Locomotive in front of fans, and that was really interesting. He played first at right back and then at left back when Clarhaut came on, and yeah, I mean, the boys, they look fit, they look ready. I'm sure they wish they had more time on the training pitch before the season starts, and we go right into a 3-game week, which is absolutely ridiculous, but but they looked good. They did.
Well, talking about the roster more broadly, obviously we were feeling like business was maybe done, but Christian, it wasn't, and Locomotive signed a youngster from an MLS academy direct. Luis Moreno joins the team. What do you think of them adding a player this late in the preseason, but also grabbing an MLS academy kid on a permanent deal?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is probably a good time to sign someone from this league, the MLS. They just started their season last week, and I know, he wasn't training with the first team or anything, but you have to assume that their schedules are, at least kind of similar, playing in the same time of year and all that. So, even though it is kind of right before the start of the season, I'm sure that he's been, as active as anyone else that Locomotive have on the roster. So, I think he'll be in form. I don't think there's a problem with the timing. And I'm very curious about it. He's clearly very young, and I just don't know what to make of that. There's a lot of talent on this team already, so that's kind of, as far I'm talking about, like, as far as what will we see from him, how much will we see from him. So there's a obstacle to overcome, as far as him playing. He's not going to show up and play right away, I wouldn't think, just because of purely because of age. I think that there will be others that have slightly more talent than him. But with that being said, from my brief Twitter research, people in Houston think very highly of him. I so far as to say, I saw one particular comment saying, there's no reason that he shouldn't be on a first team roster somewhere. So hopefully, that's a positive, and we'll see something from him sooner than later. Maybe I shouldn't be saying this, I don't know, but something in the vein of, the most recent wonderkind in Diego Luna. He's not going to show up on the debut and start, but it only took him 5 or 6 weeks before he got his first goal in Austin, I think it was, back in 2021. So maybe that's what we've got on our hands here. Who knows?
I did want to say, Mika, that Luis Moreno's signing, he is a U17 full internet or international for the U.S. Youth national teams, and obviously playing a little bit ahead of his age group, I guess, or playing as a 15-year-old into 16 with the U17s. So clearly talented player, but it doesn't seem like a coincidence. And correct me if I'm wrong here, but Locomotive's new assistant coach John Burklow has a connection to Houston's academy, I believe. So maybe this is purely speculation on my part, and John, if this is out of place, don't burn me. But but it does seem like maybe we've got our feelers out amongst those academies, a la like what we saw with Richie having some sway in the Barca Residency Academy.
I actually hadn't thought of that, but that makes a whole lot of sense, because I think John Burklow spent 3-4 years almost at Rise Soccer Club, correct, in the Houston area, and was the MLS Next Academy director there. So, I mean, certainly he'd have seen this player before. So, and I think, too, there must have been a market opportunity or something that we were able to put together without knowing well beforehand that it was going to happen, because I think earlier in preseason, Brian was asked, are you set with your roster? And he basically said, yeah, let's see what these players can do, pretty much indicating that we were done making any transfers. So obviously there was an opportunity, and we latched onto it. And I mean, to Christian's points, and my Twitter research as well has led me to surmise that this player is very highly rated in the Houston soccer circles. And just from some of the clips that we've seen, I mean, you can see why he looks, at his age, really it is about technical quality, because he's 16, still filling out his body, and we'll have to cope with the men's game, which is, that is what it is here in USL Championship. But Locomotive has shown that it has a track record of success with youngsters. Of course, Diego Luna is that flag bearer for that. But I mean, Venancio Calderon, Diego Abarca, Joel Maldonado, like these players have all, had time on the pitch and have done good things for the club. And I think it's really exciting. And I mean, we heard Brian talk about it. If you're good enough, you're old enough, and he is in the results business. And of course, you'll want to rely on senior players to get you those results. But I would say we will probably see young Luis at some point this season. Maybe even starting on the bench in the first game. But yeah, he looks like a very, very promising player indeed.
So obviously we've talked a little bit about like who has been inbound. We've talked about some of the signings that have been made, but in the manner of just kind of a quick preseason look, I want to ask and kind of put you guys on the spot a little bit by asking, who is the player that you are most looking to like have that impact to bring Locomotive from, just outside of those playoff places, or I guess technically what would have been a playoff place this year, into the playoffs this year? Like, who is the player that is going to be that X factor for Locomotive this year? Because I think we have some like known quantities, but who is really who is this going to hinge on? Who is your person that you think is really going to have to break out?
It's hard to like. I don't know about like who like the season will hinge on, but I think that this is going to be like the year for Eric Calvillo. He really stepped up to the plate last year. I think he surprised a lot of us with how he ended up performing last year, and I think that he's just getting more and more comfortable with the with playing here, and with kind of the roster turnover that we've had, he should be one of the leaders on this team this year. He should be one of the guys, because I expect to see him on the field, 9 times out of 10. Obviously, as long as Yuma's on the roster, he is like the culture guy. But I think that he may sit more than he has any other season. Hopefully, and that's not that he's not good, that he deserves it. To be honest, he deserves that rest. I think he had a lot asked of him last year, and the club did right by him in giving the defense some help in the off season. So I think that he'll get that opportunity as long as everyone stays healthy. And so, with that being said, I think Eric is going to be one of the leaders this year. And so I think that he's if he has a good season, the team will do well also. And then I think we will all agree. Well, actually going to stop there and let Mika answer, because I think she might say what I was about to say.
Well, I was just going to jump in and say that like Eric did at the end of last season. Well, not the end of last season, throughout last season, had like growing I'm him energy. Like,
yes,
he had a lot of performances where it was like he kind of dragged us out of the mud single-handedly. And adding goals from midfield too is just it's just something that we haven't typically had like that frequently for Locomotive. Yeah, we've had Dylan like in the 10, Diego Luna like adding goals from midfield, but like in terms of an 8, like a pure 8 scoring, Eric's the first one who's really done that. And yeah, I think with him being 25, like this could be a really huge season for Eric, in that he is like hitting his physical prime, in theory, and it's coinciding with, he had a really good season last year, even though the team overall didn't perform quite as well. And I think he's also indicated in some preseason interviews that he's being kind of handed the reins, like in terms of like being given additional leadership opportunities and like being the guy who's triggering presses and things like that out of midfield. Like I think he's a perfect shout, Christian, because I think we are kind of like seeing the evolution of Eric Calvillo, the young, promising, the guy who was growing into something, into like, yeah, that guy, like you said, the I'm him.
His final form.
Yeah. Exactly.
I mean, yeah, I think Eric definitely was giving him energy last season. I think he just needs to strike the ball more. I mean, he's got the best technique of all our midfielders, maybe. I mean, I think that's arguable at least. Yeah, I mean, like, it's funny because I said at the top of the show, talking about what we saw in preseason, Petrovic didn't obviously have any like clear looks, but I think just based on his resume and some of the exploits in other preseason games that unfortunately we didn't get to see, but we did hear about, I mean, he could be a very, very astute signing indeed. And actually, big shout out to the club, because all of our signings are in their primes, as far as the age. I mean, we've really given this squad a lift in terms of the average age. I mean, the oldest players are Yuma Edabarelli and Luis Soloniak. They're the only ones in their 30s. Everyone else is 28 and below. So, the turnover has been very good in that regard, and there's a lot of players entering their prime or already in it. But I think Petrovic is one of those, and he's scored goals at every level that he's played at. Like Mark Navarro, that we've covered extensively. I mean, check the Patreon if you want to, shameless plug. He also is coming off, a significant ACL injury, and so I think it was a risk in that regard, but he's done enough in his career thus far to show why Brian wanted to bring him over from Sweden, because he was a thorn in Brian's side as an opposition player, scoring goals and setting up goals for others. So I think he could be very, very astute indeed as a new signing, and playing out on that left side where we haven't really had like a natural left winger in a while. So if I'm not mistaken, I mean, I feel like we've kind of shoehorned people there. Jag, most notably last season. Yeah. So I think he will make that position his own, with probably Manny Sinupe on the other side, and maybe Luis Soloniak through the middle, or Josue Aron Gomez, whoever. So yeah, the attack is looking healthy, and I think the Swedish Serb is very interesting.
Yeah. No, I think those are good shouts. I think having the ability, one of the things that we lacked once Diego Luna left was someone who could create goals or score goals from wide positions. Like Josue Aron Gomez is the best at it, aside from like he has like done it in the past for sure. Although I think his qualities are best when he's got players that he can interchange with and not just isolated on his own on the wing, although he will body a person or two. I think the big and this is going to sound obvious, and a lot of fans were talking about this in the preseason and kind of what's going to be the answer at goalkeeper. I think Benny Diaz is a big piece of the puzzle in terms of, will he hit his next level in terms of, like, last season he makes 13 appearances, only 3 clean sheets for Oakland Roots, but keeping in mind that it is Oakland, defense was not like necessarily their strong suit. So I'm interested to see how he can operate as a bigger part of a unit. And if he's given the number 1 shirt from the start of the season, could we see sort of a Ketterer-esque attachment to, hey, once he got the number 1, like, yeah, there were some growing pains along the way, but once that shirt was his, he really made it his. And there was really no questioning. So I'd just like to see, Benny become the undisputed number one, and certainly given the early struggles of Evan Newton and all of the well documented stuff that went on last season, for all our sakes, like, I want to make sure that Benny gets off to a strong start, because any sort of lack of faith at goalkeeper is just immediate issues for the season. I think we found that out last year.
Well, I will say this. He really didn't need to make any saves, any really ridiculous saves against San Antonio FC, but he was not lying about being comfortable with the ball at his feet. I mean, some of the pressure-inducing moves that Brian's side were doing intentionally were heart-stopping, but he was fine with it, and he looks very comfortable with his feet. So, I mean, obviously, of course, he's there to stop shots, and it remains to be seen how that's going to work. But he looked all right. He looked all right. He looked like he had the trust of his backline, and he was communicating quite a lot on the day. So, yeah, I'm hoping he will make that number one shirt his own as well, because Locomotive loves Locomotive fans love a talismanic goalkeeper. So.
Always have. Well, with that being said, guys, we are 10 days away from the opener. I know it's hard to believe, and it at once feels like it's been a million years and 5 minutes since the end of last season. So going into this first match, we do open the season against Sacramento Republic, a team that we have a lot of history with, a lot of interesting moments. Some may recall a watch party once upon a time, Josue Aron Gomez late winner, but this is I guess going into as this season opener against U.S. Open Cup finalists. How do we feel? Like, what's the vibe so far of how you're approaching the first game of the season?
They do this every year, and I've spent the whole off season with a sense of dread hanging over me, and now we're 10 days away from the start of the season, and I'm pumped. We're gonna win the championship this year, guys. You heard it here first.
It's over for you, hoes.
Oh my god, it's gonna age like an avocado, isn't it? I mean, Sacramento already were a strong side. I mean, this side has, the player that I was desperate for us to sign, Ndamia Viader, who, was made famous at Union Omaha, and I think he's just come on in leaps and bounds in USL Championship. They've got a lot of good new signings. Of course, Russell Cicerone of Pittsburgh Riverhounds extraction. I think they signed someone else from Pittsburgh as well. I forget who it is. And of course, Roro. I mean,
Shane White.
There we go, center back. Yeah.
Or Wheat. I don't know.
And then, I mean, they've got a good mix, too, of, youth and experience. Because, I mean, Rodrigo Lopez, once again, the defensive midfielder who's going to wear the armband for the club. I think that's huge. Nick Ross is one of the elder statesmen at Sacramento Republic now. I hope he doesn't hate us for saying that, but it's true. He's 31 years old now, which is kind of crazy. But yeah, no, I mean, this is a good side. It's a good side. Mark Briggs is a good coach. It's Jack Gurr as well. I think he's a very good player. And yeah, just some of the transfers they've made have only made them stronger. And I mean, even Deshaun Brown, someone who, I mean, I think his best days were probably what was it with Energy, who he was with before, or Tulsa?
R.I.P.
Yeah,
OKC
R.I.P.
Energy.
Yeah, I mean,
but yes,
he's only 32, but I mean, he has definitely cooked in this league before. So, they've got options, and he's also scored goals at MLS level. So, yeah, they're looking very, very good. And in fact, our whole start is a tough one, actually. Whoever made the schedule, why 3 games in the first week, and also why all those teams, but okay.
Yeah. To start the season off, Sac Republic, Colorado Springs, Detroit, Louisville.
Yikes. Louisville on the road.
Louisville on the road on your humble host's birthday as well.
Wow.
I don't know if
they're really gonna do that to you.
I'm still trying to talk Erica into a weekend trip to Louisville. It's about a 4-hour drive from Toledo, so I don't know. We'll see. But
talk her into a road trip to El Paso, Phil.
I know.
I know.
Gives a damn about Louisville. Come on now.
I'm working on it. I'm working on it. Damn it. No, the only thing that I will say about that stretch is like, because Detroit at home I feel better about than Detroit on the road. Colorado Springs at home should be the way Colorado Springs reloaded in the offseason is like that. They did not reload.
I was like, reloaded is a strong term.
I don't know, like their X button is broken. They can't reload. Square is gone. No, so I think like Colorado Springs hopefully should be a little bit of a softer touch, but starting the season against Sac Republic, I don't know. The one area where they really struggled last year was goal scoring, and then they went out and got a guy who had 19 goal involvements last season. So it's like for a team that in Pittsburgh, which was defensive, Bob Lilly is a like defense first guy, and so Cicerone being the focal point of a defensive team and grabbing 13 goals, and now he's going to go into a Sacramento team that has pieces around him. Like Roro is in there. He's the only opposition player that I feel comfortable calling by his nickname. There's no non-Locomotive player that I would speak about so affectionately. Thank you, Christian, for that.
He's amazing, man.
And was unbelievable in their run last year too. And I think like that's kind of the X factor with Sacramento is I think that run to the Open Cup final made this team almost like level up a little bit in terms of there were guys doing things that we hadn't seen from them really. And so I do think this team is actually better than I rated them last year, simply because like they have their self-belief is like off the charts, having made it to the Open Cup final. So I do see this as a tricky way to start the season. I'm a little bit leaning towards, given what happened in the San Antonio friendly, and I mean, I don't know, I'm kind of thinking that this could go a similar way as Orange County a couple of years ago in the COVID year, where 0-0 like to open the season, and we just see two teams kind of cancel each other out, like just as a way to start the season. Like in that, what you're talking about, Christian, like we're getting hyped for the start of the season, and it's just like, maybe it'll temper things a little bit.
I would take a 0-0 for sure.
Wait, now I'm thinking about it. Correct me if I'm wrong. Did we opened the season against Sacramento last year too?
On the road, yeah.
On the road that time, okay.
And we started like a house on fire, and then got hit on the counter, and it was all done. There. And we added a penalty not called.
Yeah, it's like, and then Evan Newton decided to do a straight up American football tackle in the box.
I forgot about that. So much pain re-entering my body. I wish I could bottle up how I felt when Manny opened the scoring and just only experience that from
on a loop
last season. Like that moment where I was like, holy fuck, we're going to win the league. We're the best goddamn team in the league. Cause we that opening 10 minutes, it was like, nobody presses like this. Nobody creates chances like this. We are going to be unstoppable. And then the whole fucking house of cards came tumbling down.
And Richie missed a penalty that game too.
Oh my god!
Why did so many things happen? Jesus Christ! I think maybe that's why I instinctively said I'd take a draw because 0-0.
I would take a 0-0 just to not
calm down.
Just to not have to be put on. Just to not have to be sedated halfway through the match. So,
we also have to. Sorry to continue to bring us down, but they're also, the Open Cup continues this year.
I was gonna say the Open. Unfortunately, the Open Cup is happening again this year. No, we. So for those who maybe missed the news, El Paso Locomotive drew Union Omaha on the road in the second round of the Open Cup. So, third time running that Locomotive's drawn League One opposition. We are 0 for 2, famously. And I mean, not to bring up more painful memories, but Central Valley Fuego may have been the moment when I realized, like, this is all coming apart. Like, I think we suck.
But then, like, everything was flying in during that game. It was a weird one.
Yeah. So
our aggregate score in the Open Cup is like 1-9.
Nice.
6-1. Because Ford Madison beat us 3-0.
Oh, okay.
And then
I think it was 5-1. I think.
Was it 5? Jesus Christ. I really forgot.
4-1.
4-1. Okay. I was like, man, I really put a lot of that game out. I remember the watch party being unhinged. Like we were just like so all over the fucking place. It was like someone could have tuned into Twitch and just seen 3 people with like their heads on their desks, and then 2 minutes later come back in and we're just like fucking all over the place, like making jokes and shit. I don't know. That was it felt like a fever dream, to be honest. And I'm realizing now that maybe we should have had more. We didn't process last season well enough. Like, we're still working through our trauma. Well, Christian, you actually brought this up. So on the news front, well, I guess to round out the Open Cup stuff, Union Omaha, that game is April 5th, so about a month away. And smack dab in between a trip to Tulsa and us welcoming Orange County, and the return of Andrew Fox to the SWUP. So a little bit of a
just more things that I had forgotten.
Yeah. There's gonna be a lot of reunions this year with us playing everybody basically. There's gonna be a lot of different situations. I know a lot of people, got that Memphis game marked on the calendar. I don't know if we actually play Memphis. I don't think we do actually. Oh yeah, we do. Second to last game of the season, we go to Memphis. So
wow.
And we play Indy at home. Like,
yep.
If there's a non-conference match that is marked on the calendar, it has to be that one.
Oh,
it is
dear.
Marked on the calendar.
See what you did there.
I was talking about Indy last night on the USL show, but I am concerned about the fact that Mark went out and got every single player that he like asked for at Locomotive. Like that's my thought, is like he went out and got just like a group of USL proven players. Like it is a USL All-Star team from like 2 years ago.
He's gonna come and lemonade us, Beyonce style.
We'll see. That everyone's high on them, like the USL Tactics of the world, but we'll see. The game's not played on paper.
USL. It's important to remember too that USL Tactics, aka John Morrissey, is an Indianapolis native. So
okay.
we have to know the biases here.
Using his government name and everything. do we dox people on this podcast now? Is that what we're doing? I'm
doxing USL Tactics. I think his name's publicly available, but I guess with all that being said, we're not far away from the start of the season. You guys have heard from the boss as well, but there's also, Christian, you pointed out that there is a little bit of a thing being teased, and I think tomorrow it sounds like this news is dropping, but yeah, tell us about USL's big announcement.
Yeah, I mean, Sebastian Salazar teased something earlier in the week on Football Americas that there's a USL related announcement dropping on Thursday. Admittedly, I have no idea what time that show airs, so I don't know if it's a morning thing or an evening thing, but That's all we know. If there's anything I've learned from watching this league, it's to not expect much when they tease these big announcements. So for all we know, it's gonna be that vitamin water is the official drink of USL Championship or something like that. But
I'm looking forward to this only because it is for someone like not USL owned to tease the announcement. I think that does make it a little bit compelling. But I will be interested because I think everybody's mind goes to Pro Rel.
Yeah, there's some people really swinging for the fences with that one.
And I mean, I think to your point, Christian, like as somebody who's, previously advocated for it in the States and like we go round and round we go, I have learned to never expect Pro Rel. That's just never the answer.
No. And they're not dropping that on a Thursday right before the season.
What would be funny? Like, what makes it kind of make sense if you put your tinfoil hat on is that, like, they're pissed at MLS, and so, like, they would be the ones to drop that bomb.
I do. I mean, it does make an interesting case if USL goes that way of, are they kind of declaring war in the soccer wars against MLS in the sense that, like, would they compete for and petition FIFA for D1 designation because they operate under FIFA's bylaws and the rules of the game, which talk about sporting merit, all that stuff. So it does open an interesting box of worms if they do go that way. But I don't know that that'll be it.
It's 1,000% not that. There's no way. But like, so I was reading, more like replies and stuff about it, and what would make sense is, given that ESPN isn't carrying MLS anymore, is that there will be a significant increase in coverage of the league on ESPN. Some things that I saw were like a whip around show or like a roundup show, which would be really cool, or even a weekly game on like ESPN proper. Not like ESPN2, not ESPN Deportes, like ESPN. So probably something more along those lines is what I'm guessing.
Yeah. It does make sense that it would be ESPN like focused as well, especially with that deal getting done, like the deal getting done sort of late to even carry USL on ESPN Plus. It seemed like they left it kind of late. I do think this is a year where USL does have a little bit to prove in terms of being able to capture an audience and viewership like outside of the hardcores. And the Detroit City game with us last year like did significant numbers on ESPN for daytime stateside soccer. It is not doesn't particularly perform that well, and there was a large audience for that one. So yeah, maybe ESPN gives USL a little bit of a, hey, you've got a 1-year contract, like show us what you can do, given a few more like big national games, and maybe if the numbers are right, they can lock something more serious down. And I mean, any sort of like deal where your games are ending up on like SportsCenter and shit, and just like in the national consciousness is like probably good for the league.
SportsCenter, as long as it's not like top 10 whatever shocking plays, and it's like
not
Logan
top 10,
not top 10. Yeah, it's not one of our goalkeepers doing a meme. No, yeah, I think that's probably likely is something ESPN related. Yeah, I think it would be cool to see it on like TV proper. I mean, of course we all have ESPN Plus, but that could be a step in the direction of like maybe, like you said, Phil, actually going to war with MLS and trying to be its own D1 league of sorts. But we'll just have to see, I guess, tomorrow.
Get Duke Keith on a national TV game. That is my one ask.
Oh, for sure. I think Duke did some voiceover work for Atlanta United, I think. Yeah. So he could definitely do it.
Cool stuff. I Well, guys, thanks for tuning in this week. We are back, and we're gonna be. This is really kind of, chalk this as the start. This is going to be the start of the new season. We've spoken to the coach. We're a few days out from the start of the season, and we'll be back with what you guys expect in terms of, we'll be having match reviews, match previews. We'll be doing some special episodes probably here and there just based on news around the club, and bringing you guys everything that you would expect. Thanks for patience with a little bit of a longer off season than I think we typically give ourselves, but with everything going on, I think it was needed, and now we're back. We're ready to tackle this season, and I'm really excited to dive in, and hopefully Locomotive can prove the haters wrong. Asterisk, the haters are specifically my co-hosts on the USL show. So that's but yeah, if you guys are finding us for the first time because of the interview or anything like that, you can find us on any major podcast platform, Spotify, Apple, whatever you use to listen to podcasts, we're on there. And you can find us on Twitter at Seriously Loco, and on Instagram at Seriously_Loco. We're also on Facebook, Twitch. We'll probably talk about some of the away game watch parties and stuff as we get along further in the season. But yeah, hope everyone has a good week, and we'll hopefully be speaking to you in and around a Locomotive opening day win over Sacramento. But until then, stay loco.